Morning and welcome to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. My name is Jerry Shockey. I oversee all the educational programs here, and we're glad that you guys can all participate in our Heart of the Hall of Famer series, something we started about a year ago. And really the idea behind this, the premise behind this program is to show what it took to get in the Hall of Fame beyond just the athletics. Most of our Hall of Famers, it can be said that if their God-given ability didn't lie within professional football, they would have been Hall of Famers in something else, whether it was being a lawyer, being a doctor, being a plumber, being a dentist, whatever it might be. They would have been the very best, because at their core are those 6 pillars that you guys are studying: the trustworthiness, the respect, the fair encounter, citizenship, and all those. So it's at the core of who they are that makes them great, are those 6 pillars. And you guys have a unique opportunity to ask one of the greatest football players and one of the greatest minds in the United States questions about anything you like about his character and what problems, adversity, or whatever it is that he faced. But before we do that, I'd like to first of all thank a few folks, because without that this wouldn't be possible. And I do see Edgar is connected there, the group Wisconsin. You guys didn't get connected in the first session, but I'm glad you guys could join in here for the second session. But this program would not have been possible without a good team of individuals. And number one, the folks at SciComm Technologies. They are the ones in Richmond, Virginia that are hosting Mr. Lanier today, as well as the folks at Tamberg, now part of Cisco. They helped facilitate this program this morning in securing the site of SciComm Technologies as well. So I want to thank both of those organizations for teaming up with us for this program today. We'd also like to thank our friends there in Columbus, Ohio, E-Tech. Many of you that are connecting here today, the teachers, know that company, because that organization, because they're the fine folks that help you get connected during this program. They're the ones that bridge for the entire state of Ohio. So I want to thank Derek and Aaron and Michelle and the rest of the folks there at E-Tech. I want to thank the teachers for making this possible. There's a lot of teachers involved, from tech coordinators, librarians, the main classroom teachers, whoever it might be. A lot of folks involved with each one of these to make sure that these tests and these connections go through okay. So we want to thank your efforts. And we want to thank the students, too. Thank you for tuning in today. I know a lot of you have done prep work beforehand on research on Mr. Lanier's career and on these 6 pillars. So I want to thank you for your efforts. So if everybody, for the time being, can unmute your mics and give everybody a round of applause for everything that's been done. I would like to recognize, and everybody can mute your mics again, I would like to recognize all the schools that are participating, just so all the schools that are there know where, we got students tuning in from all across the country. And I hear a bell ring in the background. If you can make sure to mute your mics, that would be greatly appreciated. First off, Allendale Middle School in Allendale, Michigan. Feel free to give a shout for your school spirit.
Heck yeah.
Thank you, Allendale. Let's go, and just north of us, Cleveland area, Cleveland town, Bree, Ohio, Ford Middle School. I think there's only a couple students in there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to Follett High School in Texas.
Yeah.
Follett High School? Now you guys I know you guys didn't bail on me yet. Okay, we'll come back. Maybe they're just not feeling enthused today to show their school spirit. Let's go to Sunburst Public School, Sunburst, Montana.
Yeah.
That was pretty weak, Sunburst. Let's go to Conemaugh Valley, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Okay, and then Browning Public Schools, Montana. Browning, Montana. There we go. That's what I like to hear, drowning everybody else out. And then the folks at Edgar High School in Edgar, Wisconsin. Hey! Packer country. So appreciate you guys connecting here today. What I'd like to do now is introduce our guest speaker, Hall of Famer Willie Lanier, and I've got a little bit of information I'd like to share with you guys about Mr. Lanier and his career. Mr. Lanier is a 1967 graduate of Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, with a BS degree in Business Administration. He attended the executive program at the University of Virginia Darden School in 1975. His football career, Mr. Lanier was a second-round pick out of Morgan State University, drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in 1967. He enjoyed a pretty outstanding career, 11-season career as a middle linebacker for the Chiefs, and maybe we'll touch on middle linebacker at that time as an African-American. He was the first, really. Chiefs, and played in Super Bowl IV when the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Minnesota Vikings 23-7. Mr. Lanier was NFL Man of the Year in 1972 and NFL Players Association Linebacker of the Year from 1970 to 1975. He was selected to play in 8 Pro Bowls during his career, was inducted into the Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame in 1985 and the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame that same year. 1986 saw that he was bestowed with the biggest honor that an NFL player or professional player can achieve, being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When the NFL was celebrating its 75th season in 1994, Mr. Lanier was selected as a member of the 75th anniversary all-time team. Now, that's not the best of 1 year Pro Bowl or 10 years. That's the best over 75 years of professional football. He was selected to that team. Now, that's a little bit about his on the field. Let's talk a little bit about his off-the-field achievements because, as I showed with the last session, his off-the-field achievements might even be greater than his on-the-field achievements. In 1980, Mr. Lanier joined the investment banking firm of Wachovia Securities as a financial consultant and became a senior VP at Wachovia. And under his management, he oversaw about $60 million of assets. And then he later, in 2005, retired from that. He didn't really stay retired long or never really formally retired in everything that he did. Now pay attention to this because there's a lot of interesting details. There are a lot of little details with this and mergers and acquisitions. But in 2000, Mr. Lanier formed a holding company, Wyland, with the intent of acquiring an automotive logistics company. Wyland is a joint venture with TDS Logistics. In March of 2001, Mr. Lanier and another investor acquired TDS. At acquisition, TDS had annual sales of about $22 million a year. After fast forward a few years after, in 2 plants in Michigan, fast forward under their leadership, it grown to about $100 million in sales. Mr. Lanier sold his interest in that company in 2009, and he now currently serves as the CEO of the Lanier Group, a merger and acquisition company headquartered in Richmond, Virginia, which is where he is at today. And not only that, he's involved with numerous organizations, charitable groups, educational groups, as well as he's a part of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Board of Trustees here in Canton, Ohio. So before we introduce him and let him carry on with his opening remarks, I do want to show you guys.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
Bye.
Okay, I see Coma's connected. If you guys go ahead and mute your mics there, I'm glad you guys got connected. But let's go ahead and go to the video that I want to show you guys a little introduction into Mr. Lanier's career.
Middle linebacker Willie Lanier was a dominant force on a Kansas City defense that dominated the league.
Good shape, baby!
Nicknamed Contact, Lanier punished his opponents with precise, earth-shattering hits. His uncompromising play catapulted him into 2 AFL All-Star games and 6 Pro Bowls.
You didn't get that.
Okay, and if everybody can join me and unmute your mics, and please join me in giving a warm round of applause and welcoming Pro Football Hall of Fame Class of 1986 inductee, Willie Lanier.
Good morning. How are you all? I will start by saying that I'm happy to be able to talk with you. I spoke to another group about an hour ago. But one of the things that I'll say in terms of the heart of the Hall of Fame series, and I'll start with this point, it will be football related, where many of the things I talk about will be education related, but I'll start with football because you might have heard in the piece you just saw, you heard me laughing on that film. And what that was about was a game in 1972, and it was the very first game played at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and we were playing the Baltimore Colts. The player that I tackled on that play was named Tom Matty, who played with the Baltimore Colts, and he was a running back. But because I attended college at Morgan State University, the same way those of you who might be playing football now, if you find yourself at another school in high school, that person sitting next to you who might have been with you in junior high school might be playing for another team. Well, you're playing football. You're enjoying the game. You aren't trying to hurt anybody. You want to make great plays. So because I attended college in Baltimore, I knew Tom Matty. I knew him from the time I was in school, probably 8, 9 years before. So on a play that he ran what is called a circle route over the middle, and I hit him with what I thought was a great shot. I really came in low, hit him with my shoulder pass, wrapped him up, and when he hit the ground, I'm on top of him. I thought he didn't catch the ball. He told me I caught him. And I was just smiling and laughed at the fact that as good as I struck him, he caught the ball, which was something that, because of that footage, I remember laughing at the play. The point I make with that is that as I am today on this player safety advisory panel of the league, in October, as many of you saw, these big hits, these head traumas, concussions, and all of those discussions, those are things that I'm on an 8-person panel that we are going to be reviewing and discussing as time goes on. But my point is in a film you just heard, me laughing in a pro football game. And the reason I could laugh is that I respected my opponents. You think about the 6 pillars of character, as it talks about trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. The point was I respected Tom Matty, who happened to play for the Baltimore Colts. There was no malice that I had in making a play. It was one of really expressing myself with my talent, making a wonderful play, and then still enjoying the reality that knowing him, he still made a great catch. So I think that becomes one of the initial moments and phrases I'll speak about in terms of the pillars of character that we're using as a discussion today. That in trying to achieve outcomes for yourself in the future, that you always must do things in that structure. That be it trustworthiness, responsibility, caring, maintaining your citizenship. You still want to achieve outcomes, but you're not trying to achieve outcomes at doing those things to the other person that doesn't fall within these references to pillars of character. You can see people who've achieved a lot. You can see things that happen, unfortunately, all across this country. And it could be in sport where someone is injured, and it looks as if that player had made a better play, had been more respectful or responsible, that would not have happened. Serious things that happens in families and communities. Unfortunately, down in Tucson last week, you had, unfortunately, on Saturday, people lost their lives because someone didn't understand all of those references that we're talking about today. So as you start and go forward, this program is one that the Hall of Fame is creating and feels that it can be beneficial to you as your year goes on. As I did with the first group, I'll just start back to when I was about your age, maybe a little bit younger, and then trying to decide what things was I going to do with my life, what and how could I show that I was a little bit different than the person next to me. And part of that came about because I carried newspapers when I was 10, 11, 12 years of age. And in doing that, it meant that I had to be up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning, making sure that those who received the papers benefited from my service and my work ethic. Well, that put me into a mode of understanding and training and making sure I was accountable every day. So being accountable every day then drove the rest of the beginning that I could then win a trip to Miami, Florida when I was 14, have a chance to see how outcomes occur when you offer service. And if you provide service to others doing the things that you should do all the time, it will prepare you for where you're going to be going later in your life and later in the future. So all of those kind of references are your foundation. So as we started, or I started down that path of elementary school carrying newspapers, going to college majoring in business, having an interest in getting a business degree, because that was much more important than football, and getting the degree in 4 years and having a chance to go to Kansas City, where the very first thing I did was not to just think about making a team, and that was to start an MBA program at the University of Missouri at Kansas City, because it was important to me to try to maintain relationships with my college classmates who were leaving college from a business school standpoint, and going on to their academic careers. So the essence and the background became one that undergirding everything you do is your education. Who you are, how you will be defined, how you compete with others. When you look at your resume, it will be how well that you do and how that you achieve. And I'm not sure, you appear to be an older group, and I'll say that, than the previous groups, but you all are probably somewhat closer to graduating from high school and then looking at going on to college. Therefore, you would be in the third or fourth quarter of your academic life at this point in time. And being in the third or fourth quarter, you need to have already achieved a lot of your academic work, because you don't have as much time as the other group to make sure you're able to offset any deficiencies that might have been there previously. So if it's a year, 2 or 3 away, you recognize that your work will speak to you when you speak to the college recruiter. They will look at you with other students that you can't see at this time. It's similar in athletics. You don't know how someone is working out, getting ready for next season. You don't know how those other applications will come into the registrar's office as they are trying to decide who will they select to attend their school. But what you do know is that your body of work that you will have been able to present will be the situation that drives their decision. And what you would not have an opportunity to do then would be to change anything, because you would be at the point with everyone else that your body of work would have to speak. So I think that becomes the way that if I'm here with you this morning and trying to offer some insight into the program that we're speaking about today, to realize that all that you do becomes a sum of all the parts, and that's not a trite way to say it, but all that you do, all that you are, becomes that which you present to others. So what I would like to do is to go ahead and open it up for questions and be able to respond to you and offer my thoughts on questions that you might have, and allow us to continue and enjoy the journey of this morning.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Lanier. And just to go over the program format for you guys, well, first of all, Allendale, start thinking of your questions. We're going to go in order of Allendale, Ford, Follett, Sunburst, and Conemaugh, and then joining in just by view only is Browning and Edgar. So we're going to go in that order. But what I want you guys to start thinking about is you're thinking of your questions, and most of you have your questions already pre-prepared. So this is an opportunity for you guys, again, to go back to what I already said, an opportunity to ask not only one of the greatest football players ever, but one of the greatest businessmen and the greatest minds in business in the United States, to find out what barriers he encountered, and what's his advice on role models, or whatever it might be that your question might be that you have laid in your heart to ask him. I encourage you guys to ask those thought-provoking questions of him. The way we'll do it is we'll go right in order. We'll ask all the groups if you can please keep your mics muted till we call upon you, and then we will rotate through. Each will get to ask 2 questions, and we'll try to rotate through as many times as we can, probably 2 times for the next 40 or so minutes. So with that being said, let's go to Allendale Middle School in Allendale, Michigan. Do you guys have your questions ready?
Yeah, we're ready, but we're getting a lot of feedback. I think somebody is not muted, because while Mr. Lanier was talking, we were seeing another school and hearing a lot of noise. So
okay, all the schools, please make sure your mics are muted, just so it's not disrupting the rest of the program.
When you're ready, go ahead. Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Did you ever take on a leadership role as
As a youth.
youth?
Did I ever take on a leadership role as a youth? Well, I remember when I was in elementary school, I was on the safety patrol, making sure that the other students crossed the street properly, following all of the proper traffic signals so as not to have any of them injured. So I think that's the first place that I remember, if it is being in some position of taking on a leadership role from an elementary school standpoint. Thank you.
Hi, do you think accountability is important?
See what 2 o'clock works. Yeah. Go on.
Go ahead, one more time.
Do you think accountability is important?
Accountability is important in everything that you do, Because in the same way that I spoke about carrying newspapers, if you reach out of your front door in the morning, rain, snow, sleet, or shine, you want your paper to be there. So therefore, your accountability was to be up every morning being dutiful, because that was responsibility that you had agreed to accept, and to make sure that the customer received their paper each morning. The same way if you have your classwork, your study, your exams, your homework, your accountability is that each day you must do that correctly. I owned a company where I was the chairman and CEO, and I had 1,000 employees. Their accountability was that we moved parts to build cars and trucks in the United States of America. If they mispicked a part, that could shut down a plant where the parts would build cars and trucks. My liability as majority owner would be that it could cost me $10,000 a minute in liability. So the reality is that accountability is who you are, accountability is how you become defined, and accountability is what will allow people to appreciate what you've done, view you as being very competent in what you can do, and then when you become the employer, you will expect that kind of accountability from everyone who works for you also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Allendale, and I think we got that taken care of. I'm not hearing any of that feedback in the background, so apologize for any inconvenience for that for any of the schools tuning in. Let's go to Berea, Ohio, Ford Middle School. Do you guys have some questions?
Yes. How do you feel as an adult that you are continuing to shape your character?
Well, I think what happens is, and I'll do it like this, it's not, I don't think, one, that you are really continuing to shape your character. What you're doing is understanding that the principles of character, or the pillars of character, stay with you until you die. That every day that you live, you are having to manage how you interact with other people in a way that shows who you are, what your values are, and how you define your responsibilities, your respect, your trustworthiness, your citizenship. So that's something that stays with you every day of your life. So once you formed it, if that's the case, as we are discussing now with you all in different levels of school, it continues to just drive the same reality, that is something that never changes. And you need to realize that that's the way it is. That doesn't mean that obviously you're perfect, but it means that you recognize as quick as possible that you might not have maintained the proper way to do the things that you need to do, and constantly are making an adjustment that next moment that is what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ford. Did you have another one there?
No, we're good.
Okay, all right, thank you, Ford. And we will go on to Follett High School, Follett, Texas. Go ahead.
What kind of economic impact has your education played compared to your NFL career?
Well, the education impact played a lot more to do with my life than football. Football was a tremendous piece of my life, and I would never take anything away from that. It creates a different structure. It allows you to get to know people in a way that you would not necessarily know them, because your name becomes known. It almost be like a politician. If your name becomes known as a politician, as you go through government in the schools where you are, if you are known somewhat better than other students, you're running for elective office, there's a chance you might win because they know you from something else. So from an athletic standpoint, that's where sport really helps you, because someone will know you better than someone else. But the academics means that you need the great mind to be able to achieve the opportunities that can come from your body of work from an academic standpoint. So with that being said, the situations that I've been involved in that relate to business and capital, and if it's millions and then hundreds of millions of dollars of activity, comes from the business background. And that's the one that drives what I do today. That's the one that really has driven a 27-year career in the investment business, and about a 7-8-year career chairman and CEO of a logistics company, and whatever else as I continue to go forward has come from the whole academic side of the things that I've done.
Thank you, Paulette. You got another one there?
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. How important has your education been for your business?
I thought we just got that one. Did we just get that question?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, pretty much
So,
answered your list.
That's all we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
you.
Paulette. Let's go to Sunburst. Sunburst, Montana, going from Texas to Montana.
How do you define what builds good character?
Well, I think the question is, how do you define what builds good character? Is that since we are talking about if it is the 6 pillars of character, and as we've gone through just defining it, and some of the printouts that you have talks about that, it becomes one of, you have indication of definitions in your hand, and the building of it just becomes how you view each of those points of reference, how you manage it each day in your life, and how you look at what you don't do as well in that area, and how you can improve it. So I think in the same way, if you're building anything that gives you a future reality, it becomes a daily response to those things that you do, those things that you didn't do, and that's what's occurring. Because as you look at it where the definitions of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship, it becomes a definition. And I think that is the simplest way to do it. So your building is a daily walk. And when you get up in the morning, you're showing your accountability and responsibility for being in school. You're showing your respect to your classmates because your being present, I think, reflects on your interest and your work ethic as far as your school is concerned. I'll talk about later that I had a scholarship fund in Richmond for a number of years, and I gave a student a scholarship because that student had never missed a day of school. And this was from primary through high school graduation. He might have had a 3-point average. Other kids might have had 4s and 3 5s to get the scholarships. But because he had never missed a day of school, that was very impressive to me. So I'm sitting here looking at those of you at Sunburst schools. So if you raise your hands, how many of you have never missed a day of school so far since you've been going to school? Somebody, no one raised their hand. I know this, okay? So maybe what you can think about is that from this point forward, all of you smile, that's good. From this point forward, that you think about not ever missing a day. Because this young man never missed a day from the time he was in his very first day of school until he graduated. So I was so impressed with that, and that's why I'm sharing it, that I decided that's so different. He needs to be acknowledged. Now, if he had done D work, I would not have acknowledged him. I'll just say that, or C work, because that, for some reason, that would not have necessarily fit. But he had done B- work and had never missed a day of school. So even though the youngsters who were getting the scholarships might have an A-, A+, I said I had to acknowledge him because it was so substantially different than most who attend school that a kid never missed a day. Which I could say something for his character. Does not take anything away from people's character who didn't get there every day, but he just had a different view of what his responsibility was to his education.
Don't worry, Sunburst. I didn't raise my hand either.
Nor I.
So, was that your first or second, Sunburst?
That was our first one. We have one
Okay,
more.
yeah, go ahead with another one.
What was your greatest, your greatest point in your life, your greatest achievement?
Well, it's twofold. The greatest achievement athletically was being named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That was the greatest achievement from an athletic standpoint. From a family standpoint, I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, all 2 boys and a girl. Mine and my grandkids are girls. So it becomes, from a family standpoint, seeing your family grow, your kids grow, they having children, and they become your grandkids, and having a relationship with them. So that's sort of a 2-pronged question, and the way I have to answer it, athletically, yes, the Hall of Fame. Away from there, the benefit of having 3 kids that are ours and having 3 grandkids.
And something we brought up in the last group, you know, some will say that the journey itself is the actual achievement. Not all of us, no matter how hard. There's a lot of great football players that may never make in the National Football League. There's great students out there that may never get a 4.0. There's great college students that may never become valedictorian. But you know, it's important to note that you know, it's at the core, you know, your ability to persevere, your hard work, your dedication. And we shared with the last group, you know, myself as an employer, I would much rather employ a 3.1 student that gave every ounce of effort, he or she gave every ounce of effort, than maybe a 4.0 student that maybe didn't really work that hard to get that 4.0 grade point average. So thank you, Sunburst. Let's go all the way to Pennsylvania. Conemaugh, if you got a couple questions there, go ahead with those. Conemaugh, I see you guys are connected. No? Okay, well, we'll go back up to the top. Allendale, we'll go to Michigan.
When you were young, what first got you into playing football?
When I was young, what first got me into playing football was that I have a brother that is 2 years older than I am, and he had a lot of athletic skills and enjoyed playing sport. And I grew up across the street from the playground, so I had a chance to watch other kids. We hear a little background noise somewhere. I'm not really sure what that is.
Maybe you get the feedback from. Can you mute your mic in between? I think that's Allendale.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you guys make sure your mics are muted, please? Thank you.
Okay, so as I was saying, I have an older brother, and because he was very athletic and I was not as gifted when I was younger, I became interested in football because he played football. And he played it very well, and I thought that based on the way he played it, maybe if I continued to grow, and he was bigger than I was at that time, then I might be able to play it as equal to what he did. So it was really a sibling rivalry that got me involved in having interest in playing, and because of that, my joy from it was not as if though I was someone who was 10, 11, 12, teenager wanting to be a pro football player. That was never one of my drives. That was not the way I viewed it. I did it because my brother did, and I wanted to be as good as he was, and then once I had an opportunity to go to college, I then had the chance to go and play in the pros, but it was not one where, being a very young person, I would ever have said that I wanted to be a pro football player, because that was not the way that I had come to address it.
Thank you. Out of 6 pillars, which one helped you the most in football?
Out of the 6 pillars, which one helped me the most in football? I would say respect. And that one helped me the most because I had to respect my opponent equal to respecting myself and my teammates. If I wouldn't do certain things to my teammates, from if it is the way you tackle, the way you approach them, the way you dealt with them, then I would not do that differently for my opponent. So I think that the respect would be where it was important that I respected my opponents equal to those on my same team. And if I managed to do like that, then I would feel comfortable about the way the game was played, about the outcome, whether we won or lost, and being able to shake the opponent's hand at the end of the game, thank them for a wonderful opportunity. If they had traveled, wish them well on their journey home, and we'll see you again next time. But it was always about having respect for them, respect for the institution of the game, and respect ultimately for yourself, that you didn't do those things in the midst of the game on or off the field that would negatively impact who you were and who they were.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Allendale. And I think Ford and Follette and Berea and Texas were out of questions, so we'll, if I don't hear anything from them, I'll assume they are.
We have one more question.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What are some examples of times that you've had to persevere through adversity?
Say that again.
What are some examples of times you've had to persevere through adversity?
Well, the question was some of the times you had to persevere through adversity. And the first one I will think of is my very first year when I was playing pro football. And as I said to the other group, you all can try to define this afternoon what a subdural hematoma happens to be. A subdural hematoma. I'll say it again, subdural hematoma, which is really a concussion. And in my first year, I had a subdural hematoma. I was unconscious for 2 hours. I had to go to Mayo Clinic for all these neurological tests. And with that, I had to decide whether I was going to play football again. I played 10 more years, but I had to make certain adjustments in what I did and the way I played to protect me from severe injury. So I would say that was probably the first one that I really would define in terms of persevering. Others could be, if it is different business situations that you're in, and you learn and you grow from each one, and you're trying to decide how to manage a situation that is unfamiliar to you because you didn't have previous experience in managing it. But you have to summon all of your skills and your character, since that's what we're speaking about, to give you the right guide as to how to manage the outcome. So that's not, and I will not delve into a specific, but that would be where I could see the persevering. And the persevering comes from, if it is the character that you have, the belief in what you do, the understanding that the outcome can be yours. Because as I said earlier, if in this country everyone is created equal, then with that being the case, your opportunity or my opportunity should not be different than anyone else. It becomes our energy and our individual sticking to the outcome that gives us a chance to be as successful. So that becomes, I believe, the way you would get through by persevering. And I said the first was athletic, second non-specific, but from a business standpoint.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ford. Paulette, did you have any more? Or?
Can you hear us now? Hello?
Yes, who's that? Is that
Okay.
Conemaugh?
This is Conemaugh Valley, yes.
Okay, we'll get to you guys in a second here. Yep.
Okay.
Paulette, did you have any more? Okay, we'll go to Sunburst, Montana.
Okay, what do you define as moral fiber?
I would define moral fiber of having the courage to stick to your 6 pillars of character, which I would also define as principles. The 6 pillars of character, let's call them principles. In the face of decisions which might appear easy, but you know go against that. Simply put, you could be traveling somewhere, and if it were, someone might have left a case on a bus, a train, a plane. You might open it, and it could have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 worth of cash in it. You have a decision to make. Do you turn it in, or do you decide to keep any of it? It doesn't have to be 1,000. It could be 10 cents. It could be someone at the counter who gives you the incorrect amount of change. And many of you might have faced that dilemma, that it's only $1, it's only 50 cents, but it's not yours. So what do you do? So the moral fiber, I would say, becomes the substance that allows you to maintain, if it is the 6 principles or pillars of character, wherever you are and wherever there's some advantage that you think you should take, but obviously it's not right to take it. So I would just call that the glue that ties together the pillars that we're speaking about. And many of you already in your lives have been confronted with certain situations like that. Whether you made the correct decision at that time with the moral character to do it or fiber to do it is a question only you know. But then as you reflect on and think going forward, you will give yourself the next opportunity when you find yourself presented in that situation to maybe make another decision. And that becomes the the essence of what we are trying to discuss this morning.
Sunburst, did you have another?
Yeah. Which one individual had the greatest impact on your life?
Well, the one individual was my father, who had the greatest impact from who he was, what his ideals were, his skills at fathering his 3 boys and his daughter and taking care of his wife. So from that standpoint, it would be my father, but I would like to speak to, outside of that, 2 of the people that were highly respected in that regard would be Lamar Hunt, who formerly owned the Kansas City Chiefs, and there was a fellow here in Richmond who owned the brokerage firm that I worked with for 27 years named Jim Wheat. Out of that 3, father first, but then those 2 next in terms of the impact on my life caused by them.
Okay, thank you, Sunburst in Montana. I heard Conemaugh, you guys got your audio's working there, so if you have some questions, go ahead and ask those to Mr. Lanier.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
How did your hometown and childhood have an impact on your life in the spotlight?
The hometown and childhood had an impact because at the time growing up in Richmond, as you all sit in your classrooms today, everything was segregated. When I grew up, I couldn't sit with whites in a classroom because it was not allowed. It was against the law. So therefore, my growing up had a different look. I didn't see anyone in the classroom who didn't look like me. But I also understood that living in the United States of America, if things were equal, then I would have an opportunity to achieve many things that could be of benefit to me. So growing up in Richmond, Virginia, had its own individual view at that time, but then what it did was still allow me that I can be as good as anyone anywhere. That the opportunity to present itself, and I work diligently all the time, and if I'm highly inquisitive, and highly inquisitive comes from having the interest in many things. As you sit in your classrooms today, your teacher can give you subjects to study, but that doesn't mean those are the only things that you study. You could be studying outside of that subject matter as many minutes in the day that you would choose, gaining additional insight into areas that have not been prepared for you, but just being expansive in your view and your interest. And I think that being expansive in your view and your interest allows you to then gain more in what you're trying to achieve than maybe others. So being from Richmond, understanding how things were, knowing how things are now, but then just being able to rise above that is, I think, the way that I would answer your question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have another one? I have another question. Who was your childhood hero and why?
Well, my childhood hero was my father, because he worked diligently to make sure he earned the income to take care of his family. He didn't have a job that made huge amounts of money, but he did everything he needed to do to show the respect and love, the care, the kindness, the consideration for his kids and his wife. So we had a wonderful upbringing. We shared things together. He was a great golfer, and one thing I'll share about him, he's deceased now, he was a great golfer. And I learned to appreciate golf because I watched him have passion for golf. So what happens is that as I can cover the United States and travel to different places and play these great courses, for some who understand that it could be Doral in Florida, it could be Pebble Beach in California, and I at times will play for him because he played. I will play the game like he did and enjoy it because I knew he loved it so much. So, that's the person that was the hero. That's the person that I gave all the credit to in terms of how I have become and manage things in my life. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Conemaugh. Go ahead and mute your mics. And we're going to try to go to one from each site to close us out. Let's go back to Allendale. We'll go to Michigan.
What's your biggest piece of advice about character you could give to kids?
The biggest piece of advice about character that I could give to kids is to pay attention to what we've discussed today, look at the definitions of it and clarify it in your mind, or just seeds it into your mind that it becomes a complete part of how you do things. And then just make sure that you are reminded about it constantly. You can't see a person who just walked into the room here in Richmond, and this is somebody that I used to work with a number of years ago when I was in the investment business. But one of the things that he and I remember was that we were in New York on business about 20 years ago, and we were sitting in a meeting with a firm about managing their money. And one thing that happens is that everything is supposed to be above the line, on the table, and nobody doing something that is not quite right. Both he and I sat there, and the person on the other side of the table suggested to us that if they were to allow us to manage their money, which we would make a fee, what could we do for them? Well, both he and I knew that that wasn't right. And we didn't want the business if we were going to have to, quote, do something for them. So he had just walked in this morning, and he and I remember that from years ago because we didn't get the business, because we were not going to do something that was not right to get it. So in the same way, those are the ways that you have to look at things you do, step away from those things that are not to your benefit, manage all of the views of character and what it means, and to be very clear that it's not gray. It's either right or it's wrong. And if it's wrong, you don't do it. You don't try to convince yourself in any way to make it something that it isn't. And I think as long as you do that, it allows for you to have the kind of life that will be bereft of challenges that you really don't need to have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Allendale. We appreciate you guys tuning in today. Let's go, I think, Ford, did you have another one, or is that it?
We have one more.
Okay.
Out of the 6 pillars of character, which one do you believe is your weakest and why?
Which one do I believe is my weakest and why? I think the one that probably would be my weakest would be caring. And I say that because at times when I construct being very competitive and trying to be very competitive and creating a balance between very competitive and wanting to win, quote, at all costs, I wanted to be the one who's acknowledged at the highest level, that it's difficult to manage the caring side of that equation. So when I played sport, I was very good at doing it, but I couldn't let the caring side always come out as much. If I'm being competitive, I have to try to manage that. So that would be the one that creates the greatest weakness and the greatest effort to try to balance, because you're human and you want to succeed, you want to get the A, but you don't want to feel that someone else getting an A took anything away from you. You want to win, but you don't want to win at all costs, because that takes away from how well you've done. So I think it's a great question, and it's one that all of you could reflect on that question yourself, and then allow yourself to try to find which one of those 6 would you have to work on to give you a better way to manage all of them. And I appreciate your question, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because, I mean, we all have to be honest with ourselves and evaluating ourselves, what we're weak on, whether you're a professional football player or whether you're head of a business, is knowing, or a student in class, is knowing your weaknesses and how to improve upon those weaknesses. Let's go. Did Follett have anything left? I know you guys are out of questions, I think. Okay. I think we'll go one more sunburst. Montana?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Do you still attend Chiefs games and have ties to the team today?
Yes, I still attend Chiefs games. I was out there 2 weeks ago. They played the Oakland Raiders, unfortunately lost, and they played the Ravens last Sunday. I didn't get out to that game. My son is in town, but he was at that game, and I still do business in Kansas City, have relationships with the team. I have a box in Kansas City where we invite clients in to games. So I'm in Kansas City a lot. Both of my sons live in Kansas City, as well as my 2 granddaughters. So I enjoy the relationship. I enjoy the team. I'm not a fan of the game per se. I was a participant, not a spectator. And I say it like that because I go from a business standpoint. I go from a relationship standpoint. I don't go as much just to watch the team play. So that's a tweak that I have, and I always have felt that way. The participation is what I always have enjoyed being involved in doing, and just to spectate doesn't give me a lot of joy.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks to folks in Montana at Sunburst. Let's go to Conemaugh. One more there in Johnstown, PA.
Our questions related to character have all been answered. Would you mind answering for my teacher who watched you play for the Chiefs on TV? What running back was the most difficult to tackle?
What running back was the most difficult to tackle? Well, during the time that I played, it was O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson played for the Buffalo Bills, and on a Monday night game in, I believe, 1973, O.J. Simpson already had about, I think it was 867 yards, 63 yards already gained. We were playing a Monday night game. He had to go over 137 yards in that game to hit 1,000, the seventh game of the year he rushed for 2003. So as you can see, with my remembering the numbers so clearly, he must have been the most difficult to bring down, because I remember so clearly our challenges in doing that. But his skill set in that particular season was one that I clearly remember, because it was very exciting. We were very competitive. We wanted to make plays to stop him. Some we did, some we didn't, but you were respectful of the person's skill. And I remember how interesting it was that I could be in the midst of trying to watch him to make the play, but still enjoy watching the skill being exhibited. And if I were able to get there to make the play, I was happy. And even if I wasn't, I was happy, because at least I had a chance to see a very talented person perform. So that was the individual that was the most difficult.
Thank you, Conemaugh. I appreciate the question. And I know we got a couple groups standing by view only, Browning and Edgar. Browning, if you guys want to throw out a question there, I know you guys have been just sitting pat with that. If you guys have anything, feel free to ask one.
I have a question. I do. Carol. Okay, Landon. I'm sorry. Eli, go ahead. Speak loud.
What? Oh. What?
Okay. Why did you call the Colts Baltimore?
Because at that time they were the Baltimore Colts. They only moved to Indianapolis. They moved to Indianapolis in the mid-'80s. So they were the Baltimore Colts from the time that I played against them.
Okay, thank you, Browning. If you guys can go ahead and mute your mics. Edgar, if you guys got a question, I appreciate you guys being able to get in for this one. If you got a question, go ahead and shoot it out there real quick.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
How has your career in the NFL shaped you as a businessman?
Well, the career in the NFL gave me breadth.
The conference is about to end.
Where it is that I am now known nationally, the things that I was able to do and achieve were enhanced by being in the league because of being known. Now, the education and all the background is what made it that much clearer, because I had the academic side to go along with it. So the NFL has a great way to make people known and relevant, and then it becomes upon them to try to do those things that enhance it, and they go forward from there.
Okay, as you guys heard, that's kind of our 2-minute warning before the conference closes. But I just want to thank all these schools for participating here today. I want to thank SciComm Technologies for hosting Mr. Lanier, as well as Tamberg and Cisco for being a part of this, as well as our fine friends at E-Tech Ohio and Columbus, and say thank you for doing this. If you can all unmute your mics for a second and give a round of applause for everyone. And Mr. Lanier, if you got any closing remarks that maybe we didn't share that you'd like to say real quick.
Well, I think for all of you youngsters, I'm happy to have a chance to talk to you today. Think about where you are at this moment, but think about where you could be 40 years from now, and whether you would be maintaining relationships with that person next to you and that you all be interested in each other's lives, each other's families, possibly each other's grandkids. But because I played sport, I can go to Kansas City tomorrow, walk into many people's homes that I did business with, that I was friends with, that I played with, or even against, and still have a wonderful relationship. So if you build a lifetime of doing things right, maintaining the pillars of character that we've talked about, you never have anything that you have to be ashamed of or tentative about in your relationship. So I think that would be the point that I would make in closing, that doing that is a lifetime journey. And it's a lifetime journey that you're 15, 25, 65 as I am, or 90. You can see that person next to you and know that there's nothing that you've done that has detracted from your relationship.
All right, well, if you guys can all join me in saying thank you for Hall of Famer Willie Lanier. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanier. We appreciate it. We'll probably be seeing you here soon here in Canton, Ohio. He seems to pop by a handful of times throughout the year. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, because he is a very busy man with all his businesses to attend to and organizations he's involved with. So thank you, Mr. Lanier. And this concludes our program. We want to thank all the schools for tuning in today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.